Dude, that's why my videos, they're so relatable, because it's like, I was addicted to porn and video games, and literally every young man is like, that's literally me. When I talk about meditation, I get a lot of Christians that are like, meditation is a sin. It's Buddhist. It's a sin. You shouldn't meditate. Like, that's against God. You should only pray. Or you don't need these self-improvement videos. Just turn to Christ and everything gets magically fixed. And I'm a Christian, right? But that shows you how coomers and how addicts will grab any little thing. It's like, hey, I have all this evidence of why pornography decreases gray matter, decreases social anxiety, how you view women, it decreases motivation, it decreases your dopamine baseline, and all these other problems. And they'll be like, well, I don't want to get prostate cancer, bro. You know, if you Google how many Christians there are in the world, I think it's 2.2 billion. Even if you say you're Christian or that you believe in a God, if you truly understood spirituality and the concept of God and the concept of good and evil, your life would reflect it so differently. Well, as you said, I'm Kenny Bender. Easiest way to describe me is I'm a YouTuber. Currently, my content niche, if you want to put it in there, is borderlines self-development, psychology, and just what the concept I like to call it is mental mastery. So it's like the development of your mind, mastering things like habits, stoicism, emotional well-being, discipline, focus, your identity, your ego, all of those kinds of things in order to help people, mainly men. It's like 98% of my audience, mainly younger men. It's most of my audience. Get a better life, take control of their habits and whatnot. In terms of my story, I don't know how deep you would, or detailed you want me to go.
Let's talk a bit about, because I knew you were kind of previously more into fitness. How did you, originally get into fitness and then the transition from fitness to more like general self-improvement?
Perfect. So fitness came into my life. To preface that, because it's probably required that I do, to preface that, as a kid throughout all my teenage years and before that, I was a just pure blood gamer, dude. I just played video games all day. My favorites were like Minecraft, Call of Duty, Counter-Strike, Rust, and plenty of other games. But that was my entire childhood. You pair that with a pretty strong pornography addiction that started at an extremely young age that plagued me throughout my younger years. And then around, I want to say entering high school, I had friends that started training at a gym, and I call it a gym, but I lived from 4th grade on, I grew up in a very small town, like 3,000 people. You got people riding horses and tractors around, like I'm talking Texas country folk, good people, great people, but just a very small town. So our gym was like a rehabilitation in a hospital. It's the rehabilitation center. So, but my preconceived notions of fitness and the gym, because I wasn't aware of this, but this was obviously like an ego defense mechanism, a lot of deep-rooted insecurities I wasn't aware of. But I was like, oh, people who go to the gym are narcissistic douchebags. Any girl who's interested in a man because of his physical appearance is just like a shallow hoe, and that's all bad. I'm perfect the way I am, playing video games for 12 hours a day. But then my friends started going to this hospital gym, and they were begging me to go. And I love my friends. I love spending time with friends. But I kept telling them no. They were like, come on, just join us. And I would say no, because my vision of a gym was I walk in, there's like 50 Dwayne Johnson looking motherfuckers walking around, and they're going to look at me and be like, yo, yeah. They're going to look at me and be like, you look this fucking 90-pound skeleton walking in, dude. Like, what's going on? Auschwitz is that way, buddy. Like, just clowning me. And the insecurity is what got me not to go a couple times. And I would cope too. I'd be like, I got to build up a base first. So I'm going to start doing at-home workouts. So you can imagine me like, you're praying your parents don't come in because it'd be so embarrassing, but you're doing like little lunges down and back in my room, doing little push-ups, frog hops, just things like that. And finally, I don't know if I've told this actually, what got me to go into the gym for the first time, but the only reason they convinced me to go is because I was intoxicated. I was high. So like in my younger years in some middle school and high school, like I was smoking weed because there's nothing else to do in a small town. And now I'm pretty firmly against it for 99% of people, but I smoked enough where we were in like this guy's truck, we smoked, and then they convinced me, they were like, let's go to the gym. And I was like, all right, fine. So we walked like across town. We went to the gym, and my memory was such a blur because I was blazed, right? So I just remember like bench pressing the bar. I don't even know how many reps because I can't count, and it was just a blur. But from that point on, I started going because I realized, one, this is a little hospital gym. There's no Dwayne Johnsons. It's just old people that can barely walk. So that's not a big deal. And I just have a good time with my friends. But as soon as I started going sober, I instantly fell in love with it because it was the first time in my life. Because, in video games, all the leveling up and the structure and exactly where to go is laid out for you. And this was the first time in the real life that I could have a structure, maybe a workout I found on YouTube. And I started seeing results, especially as a newbie. You can like breathe next to a gym and put on some muscle. So just seeing that was so, what would you call it, gratifying. So I instantly became obsessed and addicted to that. And it actually started to take the obsession away from gaming. So I started gaming less and less. And it got to the point where every day after school, like during school, I'm just looking forward to going to the gym, get off school, go home, maybe take a nap, maybe just hang out for a little bit, take pre-workout of crazy stimulant proportions, because we didn't know how to read labels back then. So we would the nutrition guy, my friend would go and he'd say, oh, you want this one, bro. And it was probably like 400 caffeine, a bunch of exotic stimulants that are not good for you. And we'd be taking this like 7 p.m. on a school night, wash it down with like one sip out of the water fountain, didn't bring any water to drink during the workout, just flooding my intestines with like, because when you dry scoop pre-workout, it floods your intestines with water if you don't get enough water to get it down, just any powders in general. So of course I'm hitting the bathroom pretty shortly after that. But then we'd work out for hours and hours on end. We didn't know what we were doing, but it was just so much fun. And it was the first time where, because anytime before that, I was bullied a little bit for being skinny. They call me skinny kitty, or the girls be like, let me see your wrists. And I'm like, okay, here. And they hit you with this and they show you like, wow, your wrists are so small, dude. And you're just like, oh, that's so funny. But if I called a girl fat, I'd get sent to the office, put in detention. But all of a sudden, any comments like that didn't matter to me anymore because I knew I was doing something to change it. So someone's calling me skinny. It's like, okay, I'm in the gym. I'm working on it. I'm getting better. You're just a bad person for trying to bully me like that. So the addiction to the gym was there. Senior year, there was some hiccups because I got into basketball. I recently uploaded a video about that story, but I got into basketball, stopped training, lost a lot of gains and whatnot, then got right back into the gym. And then I actually started vlogging my gym journey senior year of high school, did that during the summer, did 2 semesters of community college because of societal pressures. I didn't really want to go to college. My dream since I was 11 years old, I've been making videos since I was 11 years old. But when you're, how old are you? What year are you in high school
18.
or college? Okay. So are you in your senior year right now? Yeah. So I assume the pressure of everyone's starting to talk about what scholarships, what colleges they're going to. At our school, we have this like announcement ceremony where you have to like get up and announce to all the parents and all the faculty where you're going. And I don't know about you, but at least in our school, if you weren't there and you were in the workforce group, that was like the children of lesser intellect or lesser potential in life. At least that's how we viewed them. So I felt like, I had to go to college. So I was just kind of like, what am I interested in? Fitness? Okay, I'll be a physical therapist. They make $100K a month. It'll take me 6 years. I'll do that. But YouTube's my plan A. I would be like, YouTube's my plan. This is just my plan B. And it's like, how is it your plan B when I'm spending most of my time going to classes, studying? I'm only uploading a YouTube video once a month. So after 2 semesters, I realized this is not, I was lying to myself. The school became my plan A. And after taking a trip to where I live now, Houston, Texas, in 2019 of October of 2019, and I met like all of these Gymshark athletes. It was this big event. And this was the first time I saw creators in real life or YouTubers in real life. So instantly the mental barrier was broken where I realized, these are real people. This career is real. I can actually do this. So it just like leveled up my self-belief. And I had a little bit of an ego and an arrogance that told me I could do it. Even though I'm like this little skinny kid compared to them, but like, no, I'm just as good at making videos as them. I can do this. So I dropped out, moved to Houston, Texas, still pursuing fitness content, had some ups and downs through that, kept doing fitness content up until around 2022, where I started realizing in my personal life that the gym was not enough. I was still struggling with porn addiction. I was still struggling with insecurity, extreme social anxiety, lots of bad habits, just a lack of purpose, and everything else you want, every other negative emotion you want to throw in there. I was going through it, and that's when I started getting into more self-development, especially like the idea of mental self-development. And then slowly over time, my content started shifting to that. And the more progress I made, the more I realized how much more valuable that was than me just vlogging. What's up, guys? Taking pre-workout, hitting some deadlifts, compared to like maybe an in-depth tutorial on how to increase your focus, like how much more value that provides to the viewer. So I fell in love with that, making that kind of content, and just kind of mastered. I say mastered it, but just got better and better over the past 2 years, and that's led me to where I am right now.
Yeah, that was great. I mean, that sounds very similar to me with the fitness side of it, that you first get into fitness, maybe not for like, I guess, the best reasons. Maybe you're just like, oh yeah, I just want to be jacked or whatever. But then like later on you realize, well, I'm doing fitness, but like other areas of my life still aren't improving. So, you know, I've obviously got to do something else differently.
It's shallow reasons at first, which is not bad. I think shallow motivations aren't a bad thing as long as eventually you form the nuance and depth behind it. But for me, it was just it wasn't even the getting girls at the time, which is super common. It was just, I no longer felt, I had a slight increase in confidence from this being the skinny kid. Like I said, like it was when people would bully me before, it just wrecked me mentally, but now it's like, oh no, I'm in the gym, it's okay. But then eventually you get, like, I'm sure you get to a point where it's like, oh wow, the gym actually isn't enough, despite fitness culture currently. Like, I don't know if you're into like social media culture of the gym. I was into that for a while because I was surrounded by very big name influencers, and I was working with them, and I was actually in their podcasts and their videos to some extent. And you realize like these people make it seem like the world just revolves around fitness and the gym and how much you lift and how big you are, and eventually like if you take steroids, like what steroids you take and how big you get from that and all these things. And I started going the route of like, this is not it, this is not fulfilling. So was that similar for you? Was there kind of this point you reached where it's like, this is not enough for where I want to be in life or what I want out of life?
I don't know if it was like a full-on just point or if it was more like a gradual thing, but I know there was definitely a time where I was working out consistently but still had other habits that were quite bad, let's say.
Like what?
Yes, video games and porn, same thing. Yeah. too many guys.
It's common, dude. That's why my videos, they're so relatable, because it's like I was addicted to porn and video games, and literally every young man is like, that's literally me.
Unfortunately, yeah. I guess as a broad view, why do you think a lot of young men are kind of drawn to this, and why they are kind of struggling with just life generally, I suppose?
Oh man, that's a heavy question. So the obvious answer for why it's so compelling right off the bat would be that it is such a supernatural release of dopamine when you play a video game, or especially when you engage in pornography and masturbation, because in pornography and masturbation, we already have all these pre-built primal wirings in our brain. I think it's the amygdala. I'm pretty sure it's the amygdala in our brain that drives us for that naturally. Like, we're not exactly driven for video games naturally. We might be driven for like combat, and there's video games that kind of simulate that. But in terms of
winning,
in terms of sexual gratification, that's like pre-wired. So once we find porn, even though maybe the first time it's a little more like shocking or you're just curious, pretty soon after it hijacks all those primal wirings for spreading your seed, or having as much reproduction as possible with as many varying partners as possible, because as men, that's just part of how we're wired.
Evolutionary
We're wired
success.
for that. We're wired to spread our seed, to build a kingdoms and all of that. So one, it's just the dopamine is super compelling, and dopamine, when you don't really understand it, it seems like pleasure, even though it's more the chemical of wanting something. It's more the chase than the reward. But then you pair that with masturbation. Once you orgasm, you pair that with a flood of all of these opiates, like all these mental chemicals getting released. And for men and women, the ultimate reinforcer of any behavior could definitely be an orgasm, because that is, you just reproduced. Good. You know, it's like the primal wiring, like you just reproduced whatever you just did, all the little habits that led up to this point, that is good. Do it again. And then before you know it, you're addicted. So that's the more obvious answer. But I also think nowadays, and I don't want to get all red pill, like, oh, the society is going down on men, like men have no purpose, lost men, but there is a reason why people talk about the generation of lost men and all these things. And I do think men now are struggling more than ever with purpose, especially as, and I don't want to completely bag on feminism, but especially because like women can do the exact same things now, and there's this notion that they don't need no man, girl boss.
Yeah.
Even then, like men are just like, okay, well, what am I here for besides, I guess, allowing, like, I guess just reproduction, which I guess would reinforce the porn addictions. But for me, at least, I think early on, the most compelling thing is just dopamine. There's not, like, especially when you're young, because I assume you got into video games and porn when you were young. We're not going through a midlife crisis and a lack of purpose when we're kids. We're just like, oh, this feels good. These brain chemicals are pleasurable. Like when I would get a quick scope in Call of Duty or win a round in CSGO, it was such a big dopamine release. It was so gratifying. It was so pleasurable that naturally it's like, well, I want to do that again, and I want to do that again, and I want to do that again. And how dopamine is eventually it's like, well, I need more of a stimulus or more novelty to get the same release, or at least the feeling of the same release that I got last time, because dopamine receptors downregulate if you keep exposing yourself to too much dopamine. But there's definitely a rabbit hole to go down on that in terms of like the topic of lost men. But I think the reason both me and you got into it as kids is just because it's kind of takes over our primal brain. It's a high dopamine release, and we're not taught on how to combat that. I mean, my parents were more like, or my mother, I mean, my father wasn't exactly in my life like that, but my mother, it was more just, God knows when you're doing bad things. And that was the extent of like the talk, versus if parents would explain to children how addicting it is, how dopamine works, how compelling it is to do it, but also informed you of all the negative downsides of it, and how when it comes to pornography, there's literally no benefits whatsoever. All perceived benefits are lies from your brain to get you to do it again. Even the it's pleasurable it's just a big release of dopamine and opiates. So
decrease prostate
I guess
cancer,
do what?
Some of those people online are just like, oh, but it decreases prostate cancer. I'm pretty sure that research
that's the biggest hope, because I went and did the numbers. It's such a minor percentage change, and the studies that they did on that were like
not very good.
Elderly people. So like when you take the percentage of the people, the age group they did, and the percentage of change and the likelihood all before that they would have prostate cancer anyways, the change is so minimal. But that shows you how coomers and how addicts will grab any little thing. It's like, hey, I have all this evidence. You just go on your brainonporn.com. I have all this evidence of why pornography decreases gray matter.
Yeah, exactly.
It increases social anxiety, how you view women. It decreases motivation. It decreases your dopamine baseline, and all these other problems. And they'll be like, well, I don't want to get prostate cancer, bro.
I bet if they did an all-cause mortality study, do you know what that is? Where they just look at like all causes of death from it. Not just prostate cancer. If you look at all the downsides, the mental health and all that, I bet I would bet a lot of money that all-cause mortality would be higher in people who watch porn.
I agree. I think, not to get too morbid, but like especially with suicides in men nowadays in well-developed countries, I think a lot of that I don't know how you do it, but if you found out, I think there'd be a majority percentage that were struggling with a pornography addiction when they took their life. I just think it makes perfect sense for that to be the case. And as I experienced it, like the amount of havoc it wreaked on me emotionally and mentally, especially when you try to quit over and over and you feel like you can't, that hopelessness paired with your inability to view women properly, to conversate and engage with women properly, and just socially in general, because porn just warps your perspective of how people are and how the world works in general. It would make perfect sense for it to be a major factor in why men take their life, especially in younger ages.
And I think lots of people also think, oh, I'm not addicted. And if they try and quit, then they realize they are actually addicted.
Yeah, that's another. I was like, I'm not actually addicted. I can quit, or even they'll say something like, well, I only do it once a week, and it's like, okay, let's break that down for a second. Let's compare. I do it once a week to someone who does it every single day. Someone who does it every single day, their brain is used to it every single day, and the dopamine release and the opiate release is there, but it's not as crazy compared to if you, because both are porn addicts in my opinion. But if you're addicted to porn and you like mentally edge yourself, you hold off for an entire week, and you're thinking, oh, dude, Friday's the day I'm gonna bust, and then you do it. That dopamine leading up to that release of opiates, that pleasure is going to be so much higher because you starved yourself for so long. It's like, imagine if you went a week without drinking water, how good that cup of water would feel compared to if you drank a cup of water every day, you know?
Yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it. I haven't really thought about that, but yeah. I do think they should teach like basic kind of, I guess you say neuroscience or like psychology of how your brain works at schools, because I know so many people who've benefited, who've had like addictions, whether it's, you know, they're like smoking or just whatever, like video games. Once you understand like the pathways, and not in like great detail, but the fact that you actually know that, okay, this is my body like evolutionarily trying to get me to keep doing this, and this thing's being released, and if I stop doing this all the time, eventually it will reset to a normal level and I'll, you know, feel better again in my daily life. I think that's just like really, just for a lot of people, very crucial information once they hear it. It's like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense, and they can kind of...
I agree, especially if you get it to them when they're young and their brains, the neuroplasticity is so high, and they can download that data set into their subconscious and get their subconscious to believe it so much faster than when you're older. And you're like, for me, if like I was addicted for around 8 years, that's way harder to break all the brainwashing you've been doing to yourself versus someone who's maybe been doing into it a year, but then they get all that information, like you just said. It's a lot easier for them to snap out of it and like reprogram their mind to not crave pornography.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned the subconscious mind there, and I've heard you talk about it a lot in your videos. I think it's very important. I agree with you, but like I feel like in certain self-improvement circles, it's not really properly understood or even just thought about that much. Why do you think it's so important?
So for me, I'm trying to think of the book that originally, there's great books that kind of explain the subconscious mind. Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz, The Power of the Subconscious Mind, and I'm sure there's a whole slew of other ones that I'm not thinking of. But the reason it helped me so much, and that's why a lot of my mental mastery course is based on reprogramming the subconscious mind, is because for some backstory, in terms of meditation, I got exposed to meditation well before I got exposed to self-development. I meditated for the first time in 2019. And I remember the first time, it was like a 10-minute session. I just focused on the breath, super simple. And I came out of that as if I just stepped into a whole nother reality, because it was the first time in who knows how long. You know, I was a porn addict. I was a video game addict. I always had to have a YouTube video playing or something. Like I reflect on family events where I'm in the corner, headphones on, a game or a video going on 24/7, because even the conversations aren't enough for me, to doing that. Such a simple destimulation exercise. It just completely kind of shifted my perspective on it. Now at the time, my desires in life and my understanding of myself and the world was so shallow that I was just like, oh, this helps me focus more. I'm going to do this as like a pre-workout before the gym. That was all I thought about with meditation. So I would just do it here and there, and then I stopped. And then years later, I started getting back into it and like properly going through meditation, properly learning how the mind works. Sam Harris was a really good resource for this, even though like I don't agree with Sam Harris on his views on religion or politics. In terms of mindfulness and meditation, he's amazing, honestly. Like his Waking Up app changed my life. So I started running through that, and that's when I started learning about the conscious mind. And all the conscious mind is for you right now, your conscious mind is just the space in which everything appears. So your view, right, everything in your visual field right now, the audio of my voice going through to you, any emotions or thoughts popping in your head is just popping into this space we know as consciousness. And it's always changing. It's transitionary by nature. And when you meditate enough and do a lot of like, there's exercises in meditation you can do to try to like challenge the concept of the self or I or the meditator. You realize, oh, it's like, I'm just consciousness here. I'm just this space. Where is everything else? And then I started learning about subconscious, and that's where it's not conscious, right? So it's not another being, but it's almost as if a computer has all these different scripts and programmings written to do certain things, to believe certain things, to generate certain thoughts. That is what the subconscious is. It's this supercomputer, essentially. I believe it's something like the conscious mind can process 40 bits of information a second, and the subconscious can do, I want to say it's 20 million bits of information a second. And then there's other things that the conscious is around 5 to 10% of the brain or the mind, and then the subconscious is 95 to 90%. So once I started learning more about that and I heard that, I was like, oh wow, I'm neglecting this entire thing. That if in theory, let's say your subconscious is 95, we'll say 90% of your mind, and your world and your life and everything is just your consciousness and the result of your actions you've taken. Every single action you've taken has brought you to this point. Then in theory, that would mean that your life right now, all of your problems, everything good going for you, everything in your life right now is 90% due to your subconscious. So when I thought about it that way, I was like, whoa, I need to figure this out. I need to figure out how to reprogram the mind, literally, because the amount of benefit I would get is infinite, and I could use it, I could leverage it to eradicate all these bad habit problems and insecurities and emotional problems I had.
Yeah. There's this great quote, I think it's from Carl Jung, which is, until we make the subconscious conscious, it will continue to dictate our lives, and we'll call it luck.
We'll call it fate.
Or fate, yeah.
Or luck, yeah. No, that's a good quote.
Okay. You mentioned earlier that your mom would say like, oh, God knows when you're doing bad things. And this is a concept I've come across fairly recently, that people kind of say, oh, you don't need this like self-improvement thing. You just need to be religious, and that like religion was the original self-improvement.
I get those comments on my videos. Like, guys, you don't need any of this. Follow. And I'm a Christian, right? I'm a religious guy, and I'm very much into spirituality and theology. But even like I see these comments like, oh, you don't need these self-improvement videos. Just turn to Christ and everything gets magically fixed. Or even when I talk about meditation, I get a lot of Christians that are like, meditation is a sin. It's Buddhist. It's a sin. You shouldn't meditate. Like, that's against God. You should only pray. And it's so interesting. And I think it's before I like rant, what is your religious views? Or do you believe in a God, or are you spiritual whatsoever?
I would say I believe in God, but it's maybe not what most people would imagine as God. But I don't subscribe to a particular religion, though I do actually have a Bible by me here.
Sweet. Nice. So you wouldn't label yourself as atheistic whatsoever, right?
No, I used to. I used to think I was smart because I didn't believe in God. That was funny.
That's perfect. That's exactly where I was getting. So I feel like there's this kind of, I don't know if you've seen the meme, but it's like the bell curve, right? Yeah. And you have it's low, and then it's high, and then it's low. And there's usually like a Wojak, and he's like the stupid Wojak, the like normal Wojak, and then the really wise Wojak. And I feel like it's God's real, and it's the answer to everything, and yada yada. And then the kind of middle ground, because once you start questioning reality and you realize there's a lot of problems in religious institutions, and there's a lot of questions that go unanswered with a lot of religious teachers, you become more atheistic. And then you go even more down the spiritual rabbit hole, and you go back to like, God is real, and it's the answer to many things, and like you should follow God. At least that's my viewpoint of the world.
No, I literally have had that very similar thought, I think, about that exact same meme.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah, okay. Maybe dive into that a little bit more though. So you said you were Christian, and I'm interested how that kind of affects your day-to-day life. And then I guess maybe, obviously you don't agree with those guys saying like you shouldn't meditate, but are there any other parts of religion that you maybe don't agree with as much? Yeah, so I've kind of always been Christian, which is, it's not as good of a story, right? It's way cooler when people are like, oh, I was Christian, or I was Christian, then I became atheist, or I was born an atheist and then I turned to God. And that's always a way cooler story. But for me, I was raised in a Presbyterian church. Shout out my Presbyterians listening. And
it was a really good church. I got blessed with a really good pastor, even though I was too young to understand anything. But I was in that beginner part of the bell curve where I believed in God. I accepted it. I accepted Christ and all these things. And then as I got older, I never didn't believe in it. There was, of course, doubts pop in your head because you're human and you question things and you want to learn more about things. And perhaps you hear, like, if you're listening to like a Jordan Peterson versus Sam Harris debate, and Sam Harris says something where it's like, oh yeah, maybe religious is silly and dogmatic, and it gets you thinking. But then Jordan Peterson, or probably an even more skilled theological scholar, will say something, you're like, oh, well, that's also true. Like, let me think on that. So I was always Christian, but it was, just surface. I would call it like surface level. And I've kind of come to this conclusion that, if you Google how many Christians there are in the world, I think it's 2.2 billion. And I think with Muslims, it's 1.8 billion.
Something like that, yeah.
And I would argue that, especially in the West, and, this is where I understand Tate's perspective, where he kind of trash talk Christians, and he would use the West as like a case study for why Christianity is failing or doesn't work. But my argument is that, and what I've come to now, and why I am kind of worried about those people at the beginning of the bell curve, is that even if you say, and like in your consciousness, you think like you're a Christian or that you believe in a God, if you behave a certain way in your day-to-day life, which I don't think you should do certain actions to get into heaven, but I think if you behave a certain way in your day-to-day life and it reflects something else, it most likely means that deep, deep, deep down, you do not believe in God, or you don't believe, at least in the book that's your holy book that you should follow. Because if you truly understood spirituality and the concept of God and the concept of good and evil, your life would reflect it so differently. So I was probably in that earlier camp where I had a lot of good morals instilled in me by like my grandparents and the church and whatnot. And then maybe even just 4+ years ago, getting like life just kind of took over. I'm in the gym playing video games. I'm not praying every night. If anything, I would only pray when I really needed something, or even, it's funny, going back to the NoFap thing real quick. Like, I remember when my mom would like go through my phone, I'd be like, please God, I will never masturbate again as long as she doesn't find my Yank Bank, my photo gallery, my screenshots. And then now what really pushed me more towards the concept of God and the idea that there is true good in the world was actually when I went down, I don't want to get too rabbit holey or conspiratorial or anything, but I started learning more about what really goes on in terms of the world and behind the scenes, and perhaps like people in power and certain institutions and what things like that. And you go down the rabbit hole enough to where you start seeing acts and practices and beliefs that are just, in my opinion, I view them as truly like evil, like the definition of demonic, the definition of evil.
Satan.
And when I was going through that pushed me more towards God, because I was like, well, this is supernaturally evil, beyond human nature. This is so evil that it only makes sense for there to be the opposite end of the spectrum, and there be this supernatural good, which would be God. So that pushed me more into Christianity. But I was always Christian. I always had good ethics and moral beliefs, but that's what really pushed me into it further. And then now, in terms of what I think it means to be spiritual or Christian or even Muslim or whatever, all these other religions, at least monotheistic, I don't have much knowledge on polytheism. I think there's too much surface level beginner bell curve, especially in churches, especially with teaching. And at least for me, like, I go to church, but personally, I think that, and this may be egotistical, but if you have the book and you believe it's like the most accurately written one, and you self-educate and you pray and you enact certain practices into your daily life, you can be a very high spiritual individual without the need of some kind of, what would you call it, like a mitigator, a middleman between you and God. And as a Christian, I think for me, my middleman is Jesus, right? Jesus is the one who allows me to have a relationship with God, versus a lot of people think, oh, going to church and just listening to these surface level lessons about be a good person. And then nowadays in the West, there's so many churches that are, I would argue, they're not Christian. They what would you like, progressive churches? I don't know if you've seen these, but they'll say really controversial things. The pastor might be of a certain sexuality. They may make certain claims about God's view on gender, or if God's a different gender than what the book says, and all these things. And I think I don't see that as Christian. I think that's completely off the spectrum. That's something else. That's more a subversion of evil into good than anything. But without yapping too much, yeah, that's basically my perspective on faith and how I see it and how I navigate it right now.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm not sure I know exactly what you mean by the churches, but I did see some viral thing on, I think it was Instagram or something, that some church had put up like a devil like statue or something, and some guy had like come in and just like teared it down and
based.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's definitely, I mean, Satanism is like a real thing for sure, and there's like satanic churches and satanic followers, and from their eyes, at least at the surface level of Satanism, they view it as like more an enlightenment thing. Some do it just to challenge the notion of God. Some do it because they're atheistic and they just do it because it's like interesting or whatever. But what I was getting at is in the West, and this is what Tate was criticizing on Twitter maybe a year ago or so, is he was like, well, look over at the West. You see all these churches that have, like certain sexuality pastors, and they're claiming these certain things, and there's all this degeneracy, especially sexual degeneracy in the West, yada, yada, yada. So Christianity must not be the answer because all these people are Christian and they're doing these things, right? And my argument would be, no, out of the 2.2 billion Christians in the world, I think the real number of actual Christians that are, I mean, if from my belief, saved is a much smaller number than what, the census would say, I guess.
Yeah.
But basically just very degenerate churches, I guess, or churches that they kind of throw the book out and just tell people like what they want to hear. Like you can be whatever sexuality you want, whatever gender you want, and that's okay. And God said this, and maybe God's real, maybe not, yada, yada, yada. But they mask it as like this, I don't even know what they call it, because it's usually not a denomination, but like these progressive churches, which I don't have direct experience with. Like I'm from Texas, a very Christian state, and mainly just good churches and good moral people in general. But they're definitely there. It's a minority, and it's just because social media, obviously, the minority of certain progressive ideologies and degeneracy and everything in the West gets very much amplified, which my real life experience tells me there's tons of good people who are still very like dedicated to true religion in general. I speak both on behalf of Christianity and Islam, and I'm sure there's some other polytheistic religions where people truly follow their books and follow their doctrine. But I think it is, at least in terms of Christianity, we're getting handed this bad perspective on the world because it's like, well, look, all of these Christians are hypocrites and degenerates and yada, yada, yada. When in reality, I think that's just it's the vocal minority, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, that's interesting. You're saying that they're kind of taking it and kind of twisting it to, say what they want to say, which I think is a fair argument against religion over history, like structured religions, that they have sometimes been used, they've kind of been captured sometimes and used to justify certain things.
100%. Like if you, it sounds like you're pretty into history. Like if you go into like the history of the Catholic Church, there's so many eyebrow raising things that they've done and like what was really going on behind the scenes, where it's like, oh, well, but then you'll meet like a regular Catholic, and obviously they could be very faithful and loyal to the book. I mean, I argue with Catholics in certain things because certain Catholics believe certain ways that are beyond the book in terms of getting into heaven. But like you said, historically, the Catholics will argue, well, Protestants only be like separated from Catholicism because they wanted to get divorced and things like that. And it's like, well, Catholics did all this crazy stuff that we're not acknowledging. That off the top of my head, I can't remember everything super specific, but I remember kind of going down that rabbit hole and being like, oh wow, there's just corruption and evil everywhere.
I think that's why I think I'm kind of careful to not put myself in boxes, because that's the thing. Like, that doesn't mean we should throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, oh well, some Christians aren't following it properly, therefore Christians are like, they don't follow their religion properly. Like, it's not representative of the whole just because some people who happen to name themselves the same thing as you are doing bad things.
Exactly. They name the same, they don the same label, but they may not truly be a Christian by your definition. Like Like for me, if I'm a Christian by a certain definition and I see this other person labeling themselves a Christian, but I know them, I know how they think, I know how they act, I would argue you're not my label of Christian. Like you may be calling yourself something, but that is not the same group or club or religion or doctrine that I follow. Even if the name is the same.
And it's like if I come and look at you and say, oh, well, you both say you're Christian, so therefore you're the same. I mean, that's not helpful either. I mean, maybe we don't want to get too political, but I think it's a similar thing where people say, oh, left wing, right wing. Like some people genuinely hate people because they will claim to be either right or left wing. And I'm just like, have you actually spoken with this person? Have you actually heard what they believe? Or they just given themselves this label and you just put them all in a group and say they're our enemy? It's like,
yeah, it's the result of very low consciousness people, tying it back to self-improvement, like people that have lower levels of self-awareness, lower levels of consciousness, conscientiousness. And typically when you're lower consciousness, you're more subjected to group consciousness. And, you know, they're kind of just this entity that is tied to this group consciousness of Democrat or Republican or abortion bad, abortion good, religion bad, religion good, more government, less government, all these things. And it's only further amplified by mainstream media. It doesn't matter what, if you're Democrat or Republican, they're owned by the same people. They're tools of the behind the scenes, whatever you want to call them, the elite. I'm not going to say the Matrix because that's cringe now, but you know what I'm saying. It's rough for me personally, at least for you and you're religious, because clearly you believe in a God, which is good. I think atheism stems from ignorance in some way, shape, or form. Because I think there's so much depth, nuance, and understanding around spirituality if you go down those rabbit holes, to where it's like, how could you be 100% atheistic in terms of we came from monkeys, we're a rock floating through space, nothing matters whatsoever, morality is subjective and can be bent, and it's all perspective. That's something I strongly disagree with. But at least for you, I feel like a good starting point would be, instead of like going to certain churches or finding certain leaders to listen to, and from my perspective, like a good way to, if you want to be monotheistic, right, and the big three, you know, you have the Jews, Muslims, Christians. A way to figure out which way you lean would be diving into, in theory, all the books and history, and figuring out who do you think like Christ was. You know, Yeshua, I guess it was his actual name. Like in the history, in the books, it's like, because whatever you think he was kind of ties into which monotheistic religion you're going to lean into. You know, if you truly believe that Christ was God, you lean towards Christianity. If you think he was a prophet, but Muhammad, who came around much later, was like the better prophet who said all the right things and whatever, you lean toward Islam. And then if you don't like Jesus, I guess that you lean towards being Jewish if you don't like him.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I do want to read, you know, more of the books. I did do Ramadan last year, which was an interesting experience.
Oh, sick. How was that?
Yeah, it was pretty tough. I was still training, but yeah, it was cool. I'm glad I did it. But yeah, there's definitely more, I guess, learning.
Did you feel any benefits from fasting?
It was cool to just like work straight through the whole day and not have to stop and go and eat something.
Right. Did you feel your focus increase at all, or clarity?
I've done fast before and it has, but with Ramadan, you're not supposed to drink either during daylight hours, so that did not increase my focus. It wasn't terrible. Like I still got stuff done, but no, it wasn't like optimal by any means.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. Like I'm a big believer in fasting. I don't know as much Ramadan because obviously you can't drink, and then it's at night you get to, right? Like when the sun sets.
Before sunrise and after sunset. So
okay. Yeah. So it's more of like an intermittent.
And it's terrible for.
It's like an intermittent dry fasting, I guess, is what you call it, because you can't drink as well. I'm fasting today. I don't fast as often as I should, but I do think, in terms of mental clarity, for me at least, it's immensely beneficial. And I've adapted my diet to the point where now I don't eat lunch anymore, because the amount of the blow my mental clarity and my focus takes if I consume like a midday meal, especially if there's a lot of carbs or just a lot of calories in general, is not worth it, because the rest of the day I'm struggling with brain fog. I feel like I have to consume caffeine. All the blood's going into my gut instead of my brain. versus now I've adapted it to early breakfast, intermittent fast throughout the day, and then huge meal in the evening. And for me personally, because that's where my focus block is, I'm not a wake up at 5 a.m. go straight to the computer kind of guy. I'm a wake up, cold shower, gym, meditate, eat during that time too. Usually eat before or right after the gym, and then sit down and just sit down for like 7 hours straight work, and then kind of unwind, cook, eat like that. So for me, that block is super beneficial to fast. So I still believe in like fasting for even just the focus and lack of brain fog.
Yeah.
But yeah, Ramadan, that sounds a little different. Like I'm still drinking water with some salt in it, you know, like I'm not going that far. Like dry fasting, I think there's benefits to it. There's some science that says it's a little more potent than water fasting, and it could like dehydrate or shrink fat cells. I'm not an expert on this whatsoever. I've watched some YouTube videos. But for me, like, no, I'm gonna drink water. What was that?
I've listened to a few anti-human podcasts.
Yeah, I'm something of an expert myself. You know, I've listened to Huberman a few times, so kind of an expert on dopamine and cold water. And
I'm basically a neuroscientist PhD right now.
That's the consensus nowadays, because Huberman's it's insane it's almost surprising how popular he is.
I think someone said
now it's like it's a bro thing to be into cold water exposure, to sleep optimization.
It's good.
To dopamine. It's great.
It's so good.
Huberman he introduced me to the concept of dopamine in 2021, I believe. I knew about dopamine detoxes before, but I just saw it as general. I was like, well, destimulating your brain, not no porn or video games for the day or whatever. And once I listened to that podcast, it was like the red pill of like, oh, a lot of these things that I do it's not an act of free will or conscious doing. It's because I'm addicted, because I get a dopamine release. So that raised my self-awareness a lot. That was kind of my introduction to self-development, actually.
Yeah, I speak to my friend about that quite a bit, that like science can almost be like a tool to convince yourself of something. So even if you know, like, oh, I shouldn't do this, but then if you have like Andrew Huberman or someone tell you, and look, here's this study that shows this, you're kind of like, oh, okay, this is actually legit. It's not just like someone telling me that this isn't right. They've actually tested it. And
it seems like we're getting to a point now, especially with so much science. And I think Huberman's good. Like Huberman really vets his. I mean, obviously he's like he's a Harvard neuroscientist, or Stanford neuroscientist, but nowadays, if you like do your own research, you can find a study for everything, because science, at least in my opinion, is so corrupted, and so like certain industries and businesses can fund studies to get a certain result and be like, well, you'll get this money if this result happens in the study. So you can find excuses or copes to do anything and scientifically back it.
I guess
right?
so. Like we said,
so now it's almost like the too much science is getting problematic, and I'm actually seeing in like the self-development world and like people on Twitter and stuff, there's like another pushback to like reject the science, embrace like more primitive stuff, or more like things without as much explanation, I guess, or less scientific explanation, more like rationality or human perspectives.
I mean, that's a fair point, because science works on averages and no one truly is average. So I do think you have to like experiment a bit with yourself. Like you said, skipping like lunch for you works pretty good. I don't eat breakfast. I do just get up and just start working. Maybe I should try that, because I don't know if I actually have tried skipping lunch instead, but I think it was I was originally doing it because I heard intermittent fasting was good, but then I also heard Andrew Tate say that like you don't just like, you're waking up and you're just eating and you've like not done anything. Like a lion doesn't just wake up and just eat, like you have to go and hunt. So I don't know, that kind of resonated a bit.
I think that's fair. That's why I like training in the morning. So it's like maybe wake up and just have for me, I can run pretty good through a workout if I just have electrolytes and maybe like a banana before, get a little bit of carb, and then the meal would be after the training, which, you know, if you want to get like training was like the hunting or the fighting or the combat, whatever, for the modern day. And then I work all day and I don't get the big meal, the big dopamine reward until I work for like 7 hours.
Right? Yeah, that works pretty good.
That's how I like to do it, for sure. Tate, what Tate does works for him. Like he does the one big meal at the end of the day. He has the personal chefs with all the steak and whatnot, so that's really good too. But Tate also says drink 15 cups of coffee a day, so I wouldn't take all of his health advice.
Yeah,
for sure.
Definitely. Yeah. You mentioned that like if you have a bunch of carbs in the middle of the day, it kind of slows you down. Have you got any kind of interest in like ketogenic or like meat-based diets?
So for me personally, I don't think going full carnivore. For some people, keto works, especially if they have certain. I think it's like carnivore and keto tend to work for people who have like maybe certain inflammatory responses or immune issues, and that tends to clear it up wonderfully. I think that was with either Jordan or Michaela Peterson. It was something similar to that, and then they started selling like a carnivore course or something. Michaela Peterson actually went to Tate to learn how to sell courses and sold like a carnivore course after that. The Lions diet, I believe. Funny enough. Anyways, but for me personally, what I found that works best for me, and I say that with a big asterisk, for me, and what I think for most people, in my opinion, because I used to be, I say bodybuilder, I'm still skinny, but I used to be like very into bodybuilding. I got to the point where to bulk, I had to consume over 4,200 calories every day, or the scale wouldn't budge. And I was pounding pounds of pasta, pounds of ground beef, like French toast, tons of eggs, tortillas, a bunch of things. And it was good for the bulking, and in the gym, your performance is good. But I was also semi-retarded in my day-to-day life with how my cognition worked compared to now. What I do is lower carb. What I found for me is I love high fat diet, like tons of fat, like 100 grams plus of fat every single day. I feel amazing on that. And obviously high protein, usually red meat or eggs. I like chicken as well. Fish once in a while just because I love sushi. But carbs are a tricky thing. And what I would recommend to everyone listening is to just become more conscious of your carb intake, because the carb intake, even though food in general, digestion, a little bit of brain fog, blood goes to your gut, whatever, the carbs is what causes an insulin spike and an insulin crash. So if you consume a ton of carbs, especially ones that digest fast, you're going to have this big, it's almost a lose-lose situation, because if you have the fast carbs, you get a big spike and a big crash. And if you consume the slow carbs like oats, you're digesting it all day. And for me, an oats will put me on my ass, man. Like that makes me tired. I don't touch oatmeal anymore, even though I like the taste of oatmeal. So what I found works optimally for me is breakfast. Carbs are somewhat minimal. I have found that if you get carbs from natural sources like fruit, even though it's sugar, it just does not affect you the same as table sugar. And I do not have a scientific backing for that. That's just anecdotal experience. So I'll just run you through like my exact breakfast every day. It's like 3 eggs, protein shake of, sometimes it's regular whole milk, but what I really like is the Fairlife milk because it's super filtered. I don't know if you have that where you're from, but we have like this brand called Fairlife. All it really is you probably have a brand somewhere. It's super filtered milk to where all the lactase is filtered out and the protein content is much higher. Okay. So it's still whole milk, but instead of 6 to 8 grams of protein a cup, it's like 13 to 15.
No, that's crazy.
So I do that with my protein shake. My protein, it's a super clean protein. There's not a bunch of fillers or anything, just regular whey protein. If you have struggle digesting that, I recommend an isolate. And then 2 rice cakes, which is just, if you look up the nutrition facts of like rice cakes, it's super minimal. It's just a little, hey, I get the caramel ones. They're pretty good, man. Okay. And I put a little bit of peanut butter on it. And then on top of that, I put blueberries, because blueberries, they're so rich in antioxidants. They have the nickname brain berries because they're so beneficial for like cognition in the brain. So I'm super blueberry fan. Okay. So I do the rice cake, peanut butter, blueberries, 3 eggs, protein shake, and that's it. And when I track that, the total carbs is actually pretty low compared to the protein and fat. I mean, it's 2 rice cakes, that's not going to spike my blood sugar to the moon and cause a crash. That's not going to bog down my digestion. So that's the breakfast. And then in the evening, I'm typically more lax and I'm more willing to, even though it typically does end up being a lot of protein and a lot of fat, I'm willing to throw down a bunch of rice or maybe a tortillas or some pasta, because I'm going to bed after that. I'm not as stressed about my mental cognition, because I know once I wake up, I'm still gonna feel good. Yeah. So that's how I navigate nutrition right now, and that's infinitely different than how it used to be. I used to have such a anxiety-induced. I would eat like a psychopath, because when I first got into the gym, I was like, I need to eat everything possible. I don't have a lot of money. I would literally pull up to the McDonald's right beside the Gold's Gym in the city right next to my hometown, and pound a 20-piece and a burger and like a sugary smoothie, and then go train. And I don't know how I didn't vomit everywhere and take pre-workout. And I had all the blood in my gut, which is like, you don't want all the blood in your gut. You're trying to get a pump. You want blood in your muscles. But I had this anxiety mindset. I need all the calories possible, or I'm going to waste away and be skinny again. And then I got more nuanced. I started tracking, but like I said, it was I got to eat 4,200 plus calories a day because my metabolism's so ramped up, and I was just miserable. And then I kind of cut back. I downsized quite a bit. I got leaner, but I lost some muscle. And then now I'm restarting, but instead of having to eat 4,200 plus calories to gain weight, I can eat around 3,000, and I can just do like 1,000 in the morning or 900 in the morning with that breakfast, and then 2,000 at night. And that, for me, I'm optimizing for work. So as long as that work block, my cognition is there, my mental clarity is there, that's what's important to me. You know, even like I'm willing right now to put fitness on the back burner because I need to get the YouTube popping. I need to get my businesses growing and things like that. That's the priority.
Yeah, I've heard Hamza talk about that a bit, because he's like, yes, fitness is important, but you can still get like most of the benefits even if you're not like, you know, super dialed, and you don't have to eat like 8 meals a day or whatever some of these guys are doing.
Yeah, the bodybuilding culture and the fitness social media culture has you convinced like you need to train 6 out of 7 days for 2 hours and insane amounts of volume, insane amounts of food, when in reality, I think you can go low volume, high intensity, or just kind of in the middle ground and get 85-90% of the benefits anyways without killing yourself.
And it's like,
especially if you're natural, if you're natural, because I was a skinny natty. For me, a lot of the times I ran into I was overtraining because I thought, I need to be power building, right? So I'm doing powerlifting and bodybuilding, which in my opinion, I think leaning more towards one is more beneficial, but I was trying to do both. I was working out for 2+ hours every day. So most likely, I'm sure a lot of my growth was stunted, not because of a lack of food or protein or training protocols, but because I was overtraining, because I'm not enhanced. I wasn't on any drugs. But you see a lot of these guys on social media who are on drugs, and they're working out certain ways, and they're giving you certain pieces of advice, and people just take it in instead of thinking, well, yeah, this guy is telling me to do this, but when you're on a certain amount of drugs, you don't have to go to the gym and you'll put on muscle. So you have to take everything with a grain of salt. And that being said, there are people such as Stan Efferding, who he's like brilliant in terms of his diets and whatnot and protocols. And he's enhanced, he's on TRT. So there's really smart guys out there. You just have to vet your inputs of information more thoroughly when it comes to fitness, because there's so many different voices, and almost all of them are trying to sell you something. Sell you some belief, some course, some PDF, ebook, cookbook, whatever.
Yeah, that's important when you're saying like vet your information, not just fitness though, like bringing it back to the subconscious mind, everything that's kind of coming in. Like even when people get songs stuck in their head, like that's probably going around in your head while you're sleeping as well, you know, especially if you've got these like degenerate
we can
lyrics
talk music,
and stuff.
Man.
Yeah,
100%. No, I recorded a video yesterday and I talked about that, and I talked about this in mental mastery, and it's the idea of like you have inputs and outputs, and your inputs is like everything that enters your consciousness. So it's like what you're thinking about, what you're listening to, videos, music, what you're seeing, the emotions you're feeling and ruminating on. These are all inputs that are kind of being inputted into the subconscious mind. And then that's going to change the programming, and that's going to affect whatever comes out. So when you mentioned music, I mean, if you're listening to certain music, especially degenerate music or depressing music over and over and over, you may not align with that right now. And maybe even over a long period of time, you won't fully align with that, but you're repeating affirmations in your head over and over and over and over and over, and it goes in your subconscious. And you could be not listening to music for a week, and then all of a sudden a song pops in your head. So that song, that affirmations, those inputs were in your subconscious that entire time. So I think for what the majority of people need to do is, one, reduce your inputs, because most people are overstimulated. You know, the social media, they listen to too much music, which is also dopamine inducing. It's also distracting. They probably talk or are around people that maybe bring negative thoughts or emotions into them, or just bad ideas, bad perspectives, degeneracy in general, you know, like the loser friends. You don't want to be around them too much because those are inputs as well. And then once you reduce it to an extent, then you should also begin filtering it. So consciously consuming, do I really need to listen to this music during my workout? Do I really need to watch this YouTube video while I eat? Or should I watch this lecture or this podcast or this video instead that has a slightly better message and won't program my subconscious in a way that, from my perspective right now, would be harmful? You know, it's the same, like, it's like garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah.
If you put garbage into your mind consciously, that's what's going to come out. And that's what I found in terms of like creativity, coming up with ideas, even just being able to speak, like right now in general. If I'm putting too much in or too much garbage in, what comes out is bad.
Yeah.
Almost always.
Yeah. And also, like, I guess you take like evolutionary lens, we were talking with the dopamine kind of, that like we weren't really designed to constantly have stuff going in our ears. Like we are designed, same with the meditation, to have like quiet time, you know, whether that's in nature or just generally just with whatever you're
100%.
doing. Yeah.
100%. I worry for the people who are like, oh, I'm listening to music all day. You know, you go to their house, they have their speakers, their Sonos speakers set up. They play music. Yeah, Spotify rap. They're playing like music all day. Especially what I have an issue is music with lyrics. Because that's putting, you know, just music. And they've even done studies. Like if you just listen to, I guess Bach's like probably one of the greatest classical, if not the greatest classical composer. They've shown that like, oh, it actually increases some cognition and focus if you listen to Bach while maybe you're working or playing chess or whatever. But it's also lyricless, right? But as soon as you throw lyrics into the mix, you're throwing thousands of bits of information into your consciousness. And if you, like you said, rap, if you're listening to rap, you are listening to some of those degenerate messages over and over. And I like some degenerate rap once in a blue moon. And I like tapping into those dark triads, you know, maybe like I used to do it for workouts, like listen to that stuff. But now it's like I've been aware, like, no, I need to cut back on that. You know, it's wild to be listening to music that's like, for example, rappers, they're rapping about having a girl, fucking her, and then letting the homies run a train on her. Oh, God. You know, pass that girl to my homies, you know? And it's like, that's what you're listening to, or you're listening to...
Number one on the charts. Oh, yeah, so it's a lot about society.
Number one on the charts. You're listening to... For example, I kind of like Yeet, right? Like, I really like his instrumentals, but Yeet, I don't know if you listen to him, but he's like, every song's kind of about like taking pills and like making money and driving like a Lambo truck or whatever, a Tonka, whatever you call it. So like I had to constantly cut that out. And then when you do once in a while consume like lyric music, I try to vet it pretty well. But I still like music here and there, but I've drastically cut down the music I consume because I've realized it's just not necessary. And for me, I think I'm more inclined to kind of, maybe just because of my childhood and overstimulation, but I could hear a song in the gym and it will be stuck in my head all day. Even like meditating, it keeps popping back, it keeps surfacing back into my consciousness. So, and that's a hindrance on my focus, because if that's in my consciousness, maybe I'm not noticing a good idea or a good thought, or maybe I'm not focusing as much on my work. So for me, I had to make like the executive decision to cut music. Like when I drive, there's no music. I don't listen to music in the gym anymore. Like they play music, but I'm not like straight into my headphones listening to music I like and get dopamine from at all. And it's just once in a blue moon, I'll throw on like, I love Kanye West, so like I'll throw on some Ye. There's an artist I like called Eden, who's like, his stuff's more like melancholic indie type music. I'll listen to that once in a blue moon, but like I said, those are still dopamine sources. So I drastically limit my inputs and stuff. So I'm not trying to, I'm yapping about music, which is like kind of a subtopic, but I do think people should dial it back on the music, and especially music with lyrics for sure.
Have you heard of Akira the Don?
Have you of what?
Akira the Don.
Why have I've heard of that? I'm not aware of.
Yeah, he makes like beats / songs with like I guess speeches, like motivational speeches, kind of like people like David Goggins and like Jocko Willink and
that's kind of cool.
Jordan Peterson, yeah. Because that's like his whole thing. It's like program yourself with like good music.
Yeah, that would be the example, like filtering your inputs. It's like it's kind of music, but it's also inspirational, motivational messages and affirmations being put in instead of take the pill, fuck these bitches, get this money, you know?
shoot, run, like drive around and shoot these guys.
yeah, like, so, like with hip hop, like the effect on culture is insane. Like especially children, and this isn't a racial thing. It's just certain demographics and communities like that are predominantly African American, but just people that live in that community that are so into hip hop. I mean, imagine a 4-year-old kid and their dad is playing or mom is playing in the car a song about like running up on the ops and shooting them down. Like when you're a kid, your subconscious is wide open. There's no filtering going on. It's just everything is programming to a child before like the age of 8, right? So they're listening like, pull up on the ops, I shoot him down, I fuck this bitch, and it's just like, and you wonder why there's so many issues with like violence and degeneracy in the world. And it's like you're literally feeding these kids affirmations as kids, and then now with like these female artists that just rap about their vaginas and sex and
the
little
music
girls,
videos. Don't get started on the music videos.
Oh man,
terrible.
The fact that YouTube allows these music videos without age restriction is like an abomination. Like it is softcore pornography at the end of the day. And I say that because when I was a kid, I was yanking it to some music videos, dude. Like let's be real here. Like, if you didn't know how to go to other websites, like music videos they worked.
Yeah. Taking it back to the kind of NoFap thing, do you think there is benefit to like retention? Because there's like NoFap and then there's like retention, and
right.
It kind of gets maybe a bit spiritual and a bit woo pretty quickly. But do you think there's any benefits to that, even in like long-term loving relationships? Because I know a lot of the, I think, best like scientists and fighters used to do that. They're like, I'm retaining my energy or whatever for my pursuits.
Yeah, I know Steve Jobs did it, Mike Tyson did it, a lot of fighters do it. That's a pretty common practice in like the UFC and in boxing, but a lot of also like very intellectual, creative people do it. And I agree, like it does get very spiritual and wooey pretty quick, and then you start hearing like, oh well, once you retain it this long, the seminal fluid goes up your spine and into your brain. And then like when I read that, I'm like, I don't know if there's enough evidence for me to believe this. So I can really only go off anecdotal and then just rationally breaking it down. So for me, I think the top priority, like hierarchy of NoFap needs, should be just quitting pornography, and then most likely quitting masturbation 99.9% of the time. And then once you can truly do that and you truly develop that discipline, especially if you're a high functioning person or want to become a high functioning, high productivity person, I do think retention is something worth experimenting with. I've done it. This year, I'm going to set out for 1 month to do a month of retention, probably my birth month, which would be March, a month of straight retention. And I'm in a relationship, right? Like I have access sexually. But even then, like I have noticed, especially around a week of retention, there is a switch flips, and I'm not sure exactly why. I'm not sure if it's like spiritual woo-woo benefits going on, some kind of scientific retention. If you want to be rational about it, there might be like a primal, I haven't reproduced in a week.
We gotta go.
I need to get this money and get this status and get this power.
I think that's what it is, yeah.
So that I may get mates, right? So just that alone makes perfect sense to retain, and that makes perfect sense why fighters do it. Because you got to get that dog in you,
so
right?
desperate.
For your
They're
fight.
Like,
yeah, you
have to beat this guy. Like the
so it's gonna be like it's gonna aid in the brain being more just dialed in, because it's like we need this outcome to get these bitches.
Those male deer, you know, the deer with the big antlers where they like charge and hit each other, and the winner gets to
like boom,
whoever wins that
like,
is
skull to skull,
having lots of reproduction. So I guess maybe that's what the fighters feel.
That's pretty accurate, I would say, to fighting. And then on the other side of it, it's a good tool for, there's kind of a trend in terms of YouTube. Like in the self-improvement world, you probably notice everyone just steals each other's titles and thumbnails for the most part. So like someone made a desexualizing your brain as a cheat code video, and then everyone else did it. And like I didn't copy that. You know, my ego, my pride doesn't let me copy people directly. Or like when I made it was my first video to pop off and really get my self-improvement videos rolling, and it was
Stop Your Fake Self.
Sexual Discipline.
Oh, that
it was
one.
Sexual Discipline. It was how sexually disciplined men
get everything,
get what they want, especially women, or something like that. And I saw people start ripping that one as well. But I do think retention is just like kind of the ultimate act of sexual discipline. Even if you're like having sex and just retaining and not finishing, you know, that could also be part of it, because your brain is still aware that you're not reproducing if you want to stay on the primitive side. But also I think it's a good exercise in desexualizing your brain, because if you are, let's say you're a porn addict and you quit porn, or you're a sex addict and you're weaning off or whatever, your brain is still hypersexualized and it's still pretty well trained. And I've experienced this to where it's like the best dopamine source is sexuality, thinking sexual thoughts, looking at women, doing certain actions for sexual gratification. And what I found was 5+ days of retention, a week plus, I start to notice that kind of the default mode of maybe where I source my dopamine or where my focus and perspective shifts, it shifts more into my work and productivity and creation, which this ties in, it goes a little woo-woo, but like sexual transmutation is the idea that you can transmute sexual energy into other things besides sex. So I would get into like, instead of reproducing and creating life through sex and ejaculation, I'm reproducing and creating ideas through content and creation. So and that's something I've noticed directly. Like once I get like a decent day retention streak going, I do notice a slight benefit in my work. Does this mean I'm going to go become a monk and never ejaculate again? No. But in terms of the question you asked, like, is it something, like, is it a tool? I would say yes. And I think most men should experiment with it. Like, especially if you want to be a high performing, high productivity person, just see if you can, you know, like see if you can get a retention streak, especially if you're in a relationship, because if you quit porn and NoFap and you're single, that's like, you kind of have to be celibate, right? Like you're kind of an incel. But if you're someone with sexual access via a partner that lives with you, or you're spinning some plates, you got a lot of girls, or it's pretty easy for you to go out and pull a girl, not doing that is a huge act of discipline in itself, and you're going to be building sexual discipline through that. And if it's your first time doing it, who knows? You may go a week and be like, oh, wow, I'm way more dialed in a worker. I'm coming up with all these new ideas, or I'm way more creative. I'm way more confident. So I think everyone should try it. And if you want to be better, I think it's something to implement into your, not all the time, but, you know, like I said, like one month out of this year, I'm going to do a retention. And then usually especially if I'm working on certain things, I'll go like a week without it and get those benefits as well.
Yeah. So the first law of thermodynamics, I think, is that energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transferred from one form to another. That's exactly what I was thinking when people talk about that. I don't know if it's true, but like you said, I think it's worth trying, and it's an interesting idea for sure. I don't know if like there is possible to really do the science to prove either way, but yeah.
I'm not sure if they'd want to fund it either. Like, who wants to fund like a nut study, you know?
Yeah, that's true. You can't really sell a pill really off the back of that, I don't think.
There you have it. Like, that's the thing. We're talking about a lot of things that we have to rely on anecdotal and rationality, because there's no incentive to find holistic things that work.
It's probably a disincentive.
You know? If anything, we want to disapprove holistic and sell more pills and jabs and this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
That's that big pharma rabbit hole.
Yeah, okay. Where should we go next? Yeah, on the Legacy Loading podcast, you kind of mentioned how important brotherhood can be.
Oh shit, you did research. What the heck? Yeah. Legacy Loading, man?
Yeah, bro.
That was actually I think it's the last podcast I've ever done. That was like over a year ago. So you're my first podcast in a long time.
Yeah, cool. That's like when you were saying earlier, I was going to chip in and say, do I watch this or do I watch more Kenny Bender so I'm more prepared? We chose the second option.
So you're saying I was talking about brotherhood?
Yeah, and how like that's very important. Do you think that's like a big thing for young guys who are kind of missing that piece?
Yes and no, because you said young guys. So I think it's kind of like it's another bell curve, right? So I think, you know, it's easy to have a lot of friends when you're a degenerate or you're addicted to certain things. Like when I was playing video games, it was so easy to socialize with friends, like friends that I still care about to this day. But as soon as I stopped playing video games, I never spoke to them again, because we were friends, but we were more like partners in addiction, right? So we were just playing video games together. As soon as they stopped talking. You probably, like, people have friends that drink a lot or smoke a lot or talk about a lot of negative things, or they just want to hang out, watch sports, whatever. They don't want to improve. You kind of have to enter like a lone wolf phase for a while. And when you enter that lone wolf phase, I think Hermosi talked about this. It's like this in business as well, but you enter your lone wolf phase and you have enough self-awareness and you're trying enough in self-development and in business and whatever you're trying to pursue to know you don't need those friends, but you haven't done it long enough to earn the brotherhood that you seek. Like you just don't have the receipts, man. So you have to lone wolf it for a while and get the results and build yourself as a person for interacting with people and build yourself in terms of status, and you've accomplished things that are notable. And then you can go back to building a brotherhood of high value men, or whatever you'd want to call it. So I'm still, I have a handful of friends, but I'm definitely not like, I'm not that super high pinnacle, like attracting a lot of high value people right now. So I'm like semi lone wolfing. Yeah. And not joining the war room, you know, like semi lone wolfing it for a while. So I think brotherhood's super important. And socializing, I mean, you take any person and remove them from society and from any other human, they go crazy. Like it happens. There's no way to change that. Like we are social creatures, and like on the hierarchy of needs, like we need attention. In Robert Greene's book, Psychology, Laws of Human Nature, the first law is like humans, something along the lines of humans need attention. Like every human is on a spectrum of narcissism. We need attention at some point. And if you do a lot of self-work, right? Like how I would say I am now, I've done a lot of self-work. I can get a lot of positive attention and care internally, and I don't need much. Like I'm perfectly fine being alone for 10 hours plus every single day and just doing my own work and whatnot. But that being said, I couldn't go without another friend or a person to talk to for my entire life, or I'd go insane, right? So I think you'll still have people in and out throughout your journey, but there should be a period where your priority isn't networking and getting all these high value brothers. And the only exception with that would be if you have friends that join you on the journey, and you like people that meet you where you're at and you go with them. Then yes, you can have a brotherhood with you on like the climb to the top. But I think for a lot of people in certain environments with certain friend groups, they just got to lone wolf for a while. You got to get rid of the degenerate friends, you know?
Who needs semen retention when you've got social retention?
Yeah, social retention, that's good.
Yeah, there's a good quote from Naval Ravikant where he says, like, become a person of value and the network will build itself. I think that's really good because, I mean, on like Instagram or like YouTube, like I guess really basic level business lessons, it's like, oh, go and network, and network is net worth, and you should go and like speak to new people and send all these DMs and stuff. But like, if you haven't really done anything, if you've just like decided to not go to the pub and just start sending a bunch of messages, like there's not a huge incentive for people to want to connect with you. Whereas if you start building something, even if it's not that big, people can like respect that and be like, okay, like you're actually trying here, and I can see you're aiming upwards. So yeah, let's 100%. Help each other.
You have to be somewhat remarkable if you want to attract remarkable people. Like you can get other people on your level, like you can get some scrubs with you because you're a scrub, if you want to have some scrub friends to kind of help you on your journey. But I agree on that. Like that Naval quote, that's very accurate. I think there's a overimportance. There's a perspective of overimportance that's being like pushed out of like the networking thing, but it's being said by people who they've made a couple million, or at least they're making tens of thousands a month, and then they can network and they have skills to trade for other skills because every relationship's symbiotic. Like they're trading values and benefits to each other. So like, oh, and then I was making 20K a month and I networked with this guy and he helped me, and now I'm making 60K a month. And it's like, okay, the guy making 0K a month is not going to be able to network with the 50K a month guy. So you telling him to go network, go put yourself out there. Anyone in there, and like I said, filtering your inputs, anyone in their right mind who understands this would be like, fuck off, you're a scrub. Like you are going to harm me. Like you are like right now you're like a leech or a tick trying to sap value from me. And no, you're a parasite right now. You're a social parasite right now, and you need to level yourself up first.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, you mentioned it seems that you know who Naval is, so I'm interested who you kind of follow now, who you used to follow for kind of like advice, self-improvement, and how that's kind of changed over time.
That's very good. A very introductory self-development was before I got even into self-improvement really, but obviously there was like the Better Ideas, the Matt Diavella, where, and all due respect to these guys, it's very beginner, basic level value information, but they package it in a very cinematic and enjoyable experience. So you get dopamine hits watching their content, and that's the kind of content I would consume, but it was never enough to really propel me into long-term change. No offense to these guys. I mean, like Better Ideas, he makes like these beautiful cinematic videos, but him telling me to clean my apartment or room is not very compelling, right? So, but that was like my introduction. Like I will say one of Matt Diavella's videos on meditation was compelling enough to get me into meditation, and years later meditation changed my life. So like these creators are good people, these are good creators, they make good content.
I'll just jump in quick and say that I think it's important that there are people like that to almost kind of get people through the door.
Right.
And like just I mean, they almost have to present it in a very cinematic, you know, dopamine way, because the average guy who needs to benefit and needs to hear this message can't sit through like a 2-hour Huberman podcast, because he'll just be like, oh, this is so boring. So I think it goes over their head.
And even maybe the importance of the 2-hour Huberman podcast, they don't know the importance of it because their awareness is so low, versus creators like that, or like when Hamza was doing those 5-minute dopamine crazy animated videos that like weren't really beneficial, but they kind of made you be like, oh, I guess I want to be like this Adonis guy. It was raising the awareness of people. And then later on, they'll go watch the podcasts, the 30-minute raw talking videos, the more in-depth like subconscious meditation, habit tracking, all these different things. So I guess to continue the story, once I really decided to get into self-development, like Hamza, he came across a couple times. So I would watch, I didn't really like his main channel because I didn't like those short videos, because I was at least somewhere where like I'm not learning anything. But I would like, once I did listen to some of his like story videos on the second channel, and they were kind of like making me aware, like maybe they raised my awareness to some extent, but it was more just like I was still in the stage of playing stuff all the time and needing stimulation. But if I'm listening to a story about self-development in the background, at least it's keeping the concept of self-development in my mind. And then what really flipped the switch for me was, and I hate to say it because most people aren't going to do it, but books is what really flipped the switch for me. And like Psycho-Cybernetics, The Power of Now. I got to look over my bookshelf. Dopamine Nation, Millionaire Fastlane. Those are the top. Actually, I read Atomic Habits as my first ever like self-improvement book. Oh, what's this? Marcus Aurelius Meditations. Yeah, meditation. Marcus Aurelius is great. And that's where, because you sit down and you commit so much more time, and books are just so much packaged differently than a YouTube video. So that's when things really started taking shape. And in terms of other creators, I mean, there's just so many. It's rough to kind of name drop anyone specifically, especially because the content I consume now is not the content I consumed 2-3 years ago when I was like trying to get more into this.
Yeah.
So it's hard. It's honestly hard for me to remember.
Okay.
But those books and meditation, that's a great place to start. And then for the kids now, or the people that are beginners right now, most likely the creators that'll pop up in their algorithm or that they'll attach to are probably different than the ones that you and I attached to like a couple of years ago.
We didn't have Kenny back then.
Yeah, no, that's now that you mention it, actually, I think everyone should be watching Kenny Bender for self-development compared to all these other guys, because he really knows what's up, and he took the best things out of everything and synthesized it into his own philosophy. So he's actually better than everyone else now that you now that you mention it. But no, like that's a good point. Like I didn't even think about like now, maybe in my opinion, for the younger version of myself, my content is exactly what he would have needed to watch, even though I couldn't find it. And I had to that's how I created Mental Mastery as well. Is like I had to read all these different books, like 10 plus books, and okay, this works. I tried it. I implemented this mindset and these practices. This worked. All that is kind of like fluff. Mm-hmm. This worked. The rest of the book is fluff. This works. Because most books are like full of fluff because publishers have minimum page requirements.
Yep.
And authors often like the smell of their own farts, and they love listening to themselves yap about things too long. But I pulled out all the best parts and created it into this concept of mental mastery, which is also the framework for the the free YouTube content I create. So that's what I wish I was watching. But most likely, if there's someone who super identifies with me, my content may be the best thing for them. But also it's more like picking a handful of mentors through books and content, getting their best ideas and kind of synthesizing that into the best framework that works for you is probably what everyone should do. Like, I can't prescribe a certain creator. I can't even prescribe myself because there may be someone who just can't identify and relate to me whatsoever. And thus my content will not be emotionally compelling enough for them to listen to the logos of my content, like the actionable steps. So
logos, that's a term that Ed from Film Booth uses. Is that from him?
Oh, really?
No, that's not. Okay, yeah. He just breaks YouTube into those three things: logos, pathos, and I can't remember what the other one is.
Yeah, I learned. Yeah, I know about it. I knew about it, but I learned it more through. There's this creator. He's not on YouTube right now, but he's somewhat of a friend and mentor to me. He goes by Atlas, and he's an ex-political strategist, and now he's very knowledgeable on how to build a personal brand and a cult-like following and stuff. And I paid him $1,000 and did like this event, and he taught about logos, pathos, and ethos in like your content and stuff. So it's like the pathos is obviously emotion. It's like the storytelling. It's getting people emotionally invested, because at the end of the day, we are emotional creatures, as stoic as we want to be. Implementing pathos into content, especially in an intro, is going to keep people drawn in and engaged. And then ethos, if I'm not getting ethos and logos mixed up, ethos is like raising your authority and credentials so they actually listen to you and trust you. And logos is the framework, like the step-by-step how to do things.
Yeah, like that info.
You know? Yeah. The actual valuable info that you had to bring them through that journey in order for them to actually listen to you. But that's the info that's going to like change lives and whatnot.
They had to watch the Adonis Jeffrey intro to get through the rest of the video. Yeah, maybe we can go.
I mean, I'm sure for those kids, I'm sure.
Yeah, maybe we could get a bit more into your YouTube growth, because from that podcast I listened, Legacy Loading was, I think it was a year or two ago, if I remember correctly. You were 50k subs then, I think you said, and your goal was 100k by the end of the year, or for the next year. Was there like an obvious turning point where your YouTube channel kind of clicked and you were like, okay, I know what I'm doing now, this is working, now we just go hammer? Or was it just like kind of slow and not slow, but like, steady?
So it is funny. Like I think about myself trying to remember the legacy, because I did a couple of them, but I'm trying to remember the last time like I did a Legacy Loading podcast. I'm like, oh, I was such an idiot back then. Like I'm so much smarter and better now. But yeah, no, it was through 2022. It was the transition from fitness vlogs into more self-development stuff, and I was still trying to figure out my editing and work on my speaking and my storytelling. And I was also going through my self-improvement journey, so I was trying to learn and apply stuff, and then just kind of teach it to someone one or two steps behind me. So I was still kind of a novice to a lot of these concepts that I feel like I'm getting closer to mastery now on. But it was very slow, honestly. A lot of those videos were 10 out of 10. And then 2021, beginning of 2021, still had content just bombing, like concepts I thought were really good, videos bombing. And then eventually I started getting more disciplined on my writing. Instead of just like pulling up a note document, typing some stuff out, reading it, or typing an outline, reading it, I wanted to get more intentional with the pre-planning of the content, the writing, the structure, the storytelling techniques, and all of that. So actually I purchased Danco's writing course. I'm sure you know who Danco is. I purchased his writing course because I was like, I need to invest. I need to put money into something, because like I didn't have a ton of money, but I need to put money into something so I stick with it. And I don't want the fluff of a YouTube video that's, you get some value, but it's packaged with all this pathos and ethos. I just want the logos. So I bought that, applied that, and that helped my storytelling and like the actual structure of the content within it. And in terms of clickability, what really just kind of changed everything was that sexual discipline video, which obviously that was like a Hail Mary, because I put had a female actress behind me, not an actress, but like a girl in real life. Like I had her stand behind me with her butt cheeks out, because I was just kind of like, dude, this isn't working. Like I don't want my channel to fail, whatever. And I feel like this video was such a good concept. Sexual discipline, it's a concept so near and dear to me, because it's what I struggled with so much. So I did that. I uploaded it, and it was like 1 out of 10, right, for a couple days. And then it just fell off the face of the earth.
Got age restricted.
So it actually didn't get age restricted till later. So this was like, it only had maybe 10 to 20K views. And then like, because the algorithm like the algorithm is just a factor of this. It just wasn't pushing me out to anyone else. Just pushed me out to like my kind of fitness audience. I hit the ceiling of that were clicking for booty. And then what killed the video is it got ranked in search for people searching the search term sexual. So these are kids looking for the exact opposite content of what that video was about. They're looking for like sexual YouTube videos to watch, you know? So the average view duration of the video plummeted to like a minute 30, like terrible for like, it was a 10+ minute video, and the video died right there for a month, like 30 days. And then out of nowhere, I woke up one day and it was at 40K, and I was like, oh, what? And the next day it was like 80K, 100K, 120K, and then the video just started popping back off because it took a month, but the algorithm was like, oh, we need to show it to these people, and it started showing it to like the self-improvement crowd. And then from that point on, it just kept getting views for months and months past that. And since I was making I had a new formula for making content, and I was more developed in my self-improvement journey. I was making a bunch of videos after that were just really good. Like you can go to my channel right now, and like a lot of my recent videos, I'm back in like a valley of despair for a little bit, but you scroll down, you're like, oh, it was like 1.2 mil, 500K, 300K, 200K, 500K, a mil, like whatever, like a really good phase for the channel. So that's, they were binging, and since I was uploading, yep. And that was so beneficial. And like you said, it did eventually get age restricted. It got to 1.2 million views, and it got age restricted and killed the video in the dirt. And that hurt because that video was still getting views months and months and months later. You know, eventually I had another banger like that. I made a video about lust, and it's kind of doing the same thing. It got over 1 million views. But unfortunately with self-improvement content, if NoFap and sex videos are kind of like gimmies, it's easy views to an extent, but the audience it attracts is very low consciousness people to.
You.
Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, now yeah.
Like I literally just was like fucking with my cord, like unplugged it. Like I didn't even think about it. But it attracts like a lot of these NoFap guys who all they really care about is like they're obsessed with porn, and they're obsessed with NoFap. And if you talk about anything else, they don't want to hear it. They don't care. They're like, make a video to make me feel better about my porn addiction because I feel like I'm being productive and quitting when I'm just watching another NoFap video.
Help me get to day 3.
But but obviously the people who watch those other videos about like how to get ahead of everyone else in 3 to 6 months, and how to be more stoic and embrace suffering, and all those other pieces of content I made after that kind of built more of a loyal following. And the original goal was 100K, and then I changed it to 115 early in the year. But then I ended the year with 100. I ended 2023 with 150. So I beat my original goal. I kept changing the goal which I don't think you should do, but I kept changing the goal, and eventually I was like 200K, and then my videos started going back down. I was like, oh man. So I'm currently kind of back in that valley of despair with content, but I think this year I'm going to do something very similar, but I think once I get there, I'm going to figure out how to maintain it and just like blow myself back up. Cause my goal is like a lot of subscribers, get a lot of views, help a lot of people, make a big business, and be like a successful entrepreneur and content creator. So I think while I'm in that, if you know the valley of despair chart, it's like, you know, I kind of had the
video.
Go up and then down, and then, but I know I'm around here, so pretty soon I'm gonna be going back up.
More female actresses wanted.
I hopefully I don't resort to that. There's a lot of self-improvement creators that do that, like, or they might have a girlfriend who has big tits and they put her on thumbnails, or they just Photoshop an adult actress or a porn-looking cartoon into every single thumbnail, and every video is somewhat about girls and NoFap. And I'm like, dude, you're missing out on. That's why the red pill is so popular, I guess, because it's all about females and sex, which I get, but that's the thing. Like, their brains are remaining sexualized. But it's like there's so many other aspects of self-actualization that you're not going to do because all of your consciousness is dialed in on sexual topics.
Yeah. And I would say it's almost feeding into the problem a little bit because they're like adding to that kind of imagery and stuff to get people in.
Agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I didn't feel like people would comment. It's a double-sided sword for sure, because people would comment on even my lust video, which there's no like butt cheeks. It's just like a girl's legs. Like it's an actual picture I took. So I had a girl standing with like a skirt and like legs, and I'm like in between the legs laying on a bed just looking disinterested or whatever. And it was like, why lust is ruining your life. And even on those videos, people comment like, why would you make this thumbnail? You only care about views. You want to harm people. You don't want to help people. And I'm thinking, okay, would you prefer if the video got 10,000 views and helped 1,000 people actually change, or if it got 1 million views and helped 100 million people actually change? You know, then it's like the packaging is like, well, maybe it's my moral duty to clickbait a little bit because I can help more men. So that's how I view it currently.
Yeah, it is a bit of a weird like dichotomy, but I definitely get what you're saying for sure, because I wish it wasn't that way, but the truth is it is that way. So I think it does make sense to do it, unfortunately, but that is the way of the world by the looks of it at the current point. But
yeah,
I am hopeful. As we were saying, Human earlier is now kind of, I mean, he's not super mainstream, but he's a lot more mainstream than he was. He's got like 5 million subscribers on YouTube or something. That like to me is like the ideal outcome, that, and that's why I'm you know, Andrew Kirby, I'm very supportive of his stuff and trying to help creators like grow and, you know, build businesses as well, because that's what we need really, is we need self-improvement to go fully mainstream. And like that's going to take a lot, because we've talked about a lot today about like the games, like the music, the junk food, like all that stuff needs to change. Like it's so much, bro. But I think, yeah, it's gonna have to be bottom up, not top down, because I don't think the government, well, they're probably making too much money off of it, to be honest.
No, they might want, like, they probably don't mind people getting in the gym and stuff and little things like that, but I'm sure a lot of the powers that be, they don't want like true self-actualization through self-development for the majority of the population, because that's going to introduce a lot of problems to like the main institutions that benefit and control everything currently. So yeah, like you said, it's definitely going to be a bottom down thing. I think more and more people are realizing that, oh, I want to succeed in business. A lot of these self-improvement ideas also help immensely with business, or help immensely with focus, or help immensely with creativity and all these different things. So do I think it's going to become super, super mainstream? I'm not that optimistic about the average person in the general population. I think the mediocre, I think Hermosi called it like the mediocre masses, they'll probably remain mediocre, but I do have hope for a subgroup of people that want to become outliers in the world, that will be drawn to like the Kenny Benders, the Owen Sheasbys of the world, and obviously like the big names like Huberman and all these more like uncut raw content. I'm not optimistic for everyone, but I think enough people are going to shift towards this to where it can make a big change in the world and form a community of people who are very highly successful, highly actualized, just the better life, the good life that everyone desires, right? That's probably, it's the path to it.
And yeah, it can be kind of overwhelming, I think, for some people, like if they think too big and about like, you know, the whole population and stuff. But I think the best thing you can do is just kind of sort yourself out. It's kind of like Jordan Peterson saying, I suppose, sort yourself out, sort out, like, help your family, and then it kind of expands out from there.
It's like clean your room first, right?
yeah. Because then you like inspire other people and they see it's possible. So even if someone is like, oh bro, I'd rather just stay here and eat my junk food and play my video games all day, at least they then know, like, if I ever feel like it, there is actually a place I can go. There's the possibility.
And that's like the beginner content. Even like, I'm sure I probably need to lean into beginner content more if I want to grow, is because for those people, the value was in the fact that it just raised their awareness of their own potential, what's possible, what routes they can take to better themselves. And even if they're not ready, or they're not in that moment going to start going down all the logos of my content, just raising their awareness is value, because you want to raise your awareness and consciousness of things. Otherwise, you remain a low, borderline unconscious NPC of a person. Like you're barely a person. You're just kind of like running a script in society.
Yeah, go to college, get a job, retire at 70 or whatever.
Invest in that retirement. Invest in Social Security that won't exist when you're old, and retire at 70 with $1 million. That's going to be worth like $10,000 by the time. It's scary. And like I don't hate like secondary education in general, because we need the doctors and the lawyers and whatnot, but I've noticed a lot. I even have someone who was a friend of me. They graduated from the same high school, and they went and did their 4 years, got a degree. They went back home. didn't do anything with it. The degree was meaningless. And now they're going to like kind of it's like a week-long school to get a different kind of occupation that is not related to their degree whatsoever, but it's the occupation that they're interested in and that's going to pay decent, that they could have just done straight out of high school. But instead they went and got in who knows how much debt or spent how much money to go through college. And that's what most people do, because like you are experiencing now in your senior, like I experienced, the societal pressure and the social pressure and the pressure from the education system to better pick a school, you better get in there. Don't take a gap year. You're going to forget how to learn. That's bad. Like get into school, go. And I think for the majority of people that go through that, it's more of a mechanism to get the monkeys in the cubicles that we need for the big dogs that run the companies. They need, at the end of the day, we need the people that cook the burgers and sit in the cubicles and whatnot. I don't wish that upon myself or you or any of our audience or anyone that has a desire for a better life and wants to raise their awareness and eventually self-develop.
Yeah. When you said you were going through that period of switching from fitness to self-improvement, you said you were having a lot of like 10 out of 10 videos, like poorly performing. Was there a point where you're like, oh, maybe this just isn't working and I should just go back to fitness?
That's interesting. There was definitely points where I was like, this isn't working, but there was never a point where I wanted to go back to fitness, even though I knew I could. So like I've always had an ego and an arrogance around my ability to make content, even if I go through periods of like no views, because what really shifted me into wanting to make value content is all I did was fitness vlogs. It was like a day in the life. Here's me eating. Here's me what the foods I eat. Here's me taking pre-workout. Here's me lifting to some dubstep. And that was it. And then eventually I made a video that actually meant a lot to me called Dear Skinny Guys. And it was a talking head video where I told the story of being the skinny kid and I gave them kind of the best tips that helped me put on muscle mass and like the better mindsets to have about training and eating, all these things. And that video it like popped off and did over 1 mil. Right. So that's when I was like, oh, one, the talking head stuff can work very well. And also the amount of comments I received back of like, this video helped me so much. This video means a lot, yada, yada, yada. And the fact that I knew that a video was popping off that shared value compared to most likely even if I made a video that was just entertainment, it popped off, I would not feel the same level of fulfillment or even I would feel a moral obligation to put out something that pops off if it gives value. But if it's just entertainment, I feel like there's kind of ethical questions of, if anything, am I just actually hurting the mainstream, the average person by just giving them more slop to consume, more bad inputs, more cheap dopamine and whatnot. So then I was like, okay, well, and then I started getting into self-improvement around the time. So I was like, I'll make some more talking head videos. And I kept them around fitness for a little bit and they were doing pretty good. It was a video like why I quit the push-pull leg split and do this split instead. And that one got a couple 100K. And then I made a video, it didn't do that well, but I made a video about dopamine because I learned about dopamine, but I still was like, oh, I'm still a fitness creator. So I made it like how the gym is messing, or how, I don't remember exactly what it was titled, but something around like how dopamine is messing with the gym and your motivation and whatnot, because people take a crazy stimulant. And a lot of these pre-workouts have, if you have a high dose of L-tyrosine, it's an amino acid that converts to L-dopa, which gets released as dopamine, or a lot of pre-workouts have macunapurines, which when ingested immediately converts to L-dopa. So it's just like more dopamine to be released into your brain. So I was like, you take that, you listen to your favorite music, you're talking to all your friends, your exercise by itself releases dopamine, and thus you're going to have this downswing and you're going to have this like post-gym depression period, which I would experience because it's like a high and then a low right after I get home from the gym and I just feel like, right? So I made a video about that. And then eventually I was like, wanted to talk just about self-improvement because I got to that point we discussed where it's like, there's so much more to fitness. So I started transitioning and yeah, the videos started not performing well, but even then and even more now, I just have this idea where it's like, as long as I keep improving my video, as long as I keep learning about the things I want to teach and developing myself, and I literally just don't stop, it would be unreasonable for me not to succeed at some point. So it's like, as long as my outputs into the world are like undeniable in terms of eventually they will succeed. Like I had that mindset of eventually it will. And I got like a taste of that payoff in 2023 when like a lot of those videos started paying off. And those videos are infinitely better than the videos I was making in 2022. So it was just, everything compounds. And there's a saying where it's like nothing happens and then everything happens. So nothing was happening, But behind the scenes, it was all, everything was being built for the everything to happen. And I get like the multi-millions of views in a month in early 2023. And now I'm kind of going back down into the lower view videos for a little bit. But I think the reversal now, I'm more mentally prepared to ride that wave up and kind of stabilize it and actually build a strong personal brand and put out better content that's more valuable to people. But yeah, no, there was periods where I was like, oh, dude, this shit's not working. But there was never a period where I was like, I'm going to quit. I mean, I dropped out of college to make YouTube videos. So there was never I'm going to quit content. And there was also never I'm going to go back to fitness vlogs, because I just got that immense sense of fulfillment making valuable content. I didn't want to go back to fitness vlogs.
Yeah, it's all die trying kind of mindset. One of the things that stuck with me, or like really stood out to me on that legacy loading podcast you did, was you said like you'll be grinding, you'll be like down here for ages, and then you'll like, you know, shoot up exponentially. But like you said, you have to actually go through that. Like people talk about like overnight success, but it's like you wouldn't have learned the skills, you wouldn't have known the storytelling, the editing. Just like you can't just pull up to a PC and just edit it like that. You would have had to go through the fails. Okay, this doesn't work, this does work. Okay, that kind of worked. And then you keep tweaking, but you're still like not seeing that much, and then you hit it and then it's just bang.
Yeah, no, 100%. I completely forgot about that podcast, but that right there, I vaguely remember that, because I was in this exact department actually, and it was in 2022, and the videos were doing bad. And I just like thought to myself, and I was like meditating, I was just thinking, I was like, I have to accept that there's going to be a period of time where I just have to eat shit every day and not see any of the benefits. And I just have to have the ability to zoom out on a long enough time horizon to understand that the benefits will come. But in my day-to-day, I just got to eat the shit, right? So that was my attitude, and eventually it did work. Even if it wasn't like, I'm not like a 1 million subscriber channel making hundreds of thousands of dollars a month or anything, but you know, like I got that new base. Like I had the increase, like a lot of views, and I went back down, but now my new base is like 10K like self-improvement people that are really into it, compared to like even 10K of just people who just want to watch fitness vlogs, or 5K people who just want to watch fitness vlogs, you know? So like I'm like, even though I went back down, I'm not at the same down as I was a year or 2 years ago.
The new like level is still higher. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, you know?
Yeah. Higher lows. Yeah, I think we'll wrap up here. This has been great. I feel like I could talk to you for ages. Maybe we could run a part 2 at some point.
For sure.
Where can people check you out, your courses, YouTube, Instagram?
Yeah, so YouTube, Kenny Bender, Instagram @Kenny'sFit. I still have that fitness username, even though I'm not as into that now. Twitter is also @Kenny'sFit. I just got active on Twitter, or X, so definitely if you want more frequent short form posts, that's where to find me. I have a newsletter that's completely free. I have like 11,000 people on there, where I put out more long form self-development stuff, and just maybe once a week I toss out something that's maybe a shorter story or a shorter anecdote that I think people need to hear, I think will be beneficial. So you can sign up for that. It's also free. I have a free 30-minute video guide on dopamine. I know we just talked a lot about dopamine, and I packaged all of my personal experience and things I learned about dopamine into a 30-minute guide that you could get. That's free. All the links of these things are in the description of my YouTube videos. I have a free 5-day meditation guide. I swear by meditation. It changed my life. I think everyone should meditate every day. So check that out. It's guided by me. It's for beginners. And then in terms of paid stuff, I do have a course called Mental Mastery. It's like my flagship self-development masterclass. It's the transformation I glanced over in this podcast, condensed into like 30 days of very simple education and very simple steps, a protocol for one to take to get rid of their insecurity, get rid of their distractibility, procrastination, their subjectivity to negative emotions, their lack of ability to focus, and everything around that. So if for those who relate to me and my story and feel like they're more in a beginner stage of where I was at, that's like exactly what I would prescribe to you, because when I made it, it's like, what did I need 2 or 3 years ago that would have changed my life, that I had to kind of do it the hard way by reading 10 plus books and spend months testing things and trying different mindsets and beliefs and habits and whatnot. Instead, you can do it in 30 days. So that's Mental Mastery, but you don't have to go buy anything. I have plenty of free stuff that you can check out on my YouTube channel, and the free things in the description and those links, but that's where to find me. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll put those links in the description for anyone to check that out. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, I gotta get you an affiliate link for Metal Mastery so you can make some money if anyone buys it.
Yeah, kennysfit.com/mm/Sheasby. Right. Yeah. Thanks for doing this. If I'm ever in Houston, maybe we can hit a workout or something.
100%. Where are you right now?
UK. Near London.
UK? Do you visit the States much, or?
No, I've never been.
Okay. Well, when you do, you gotta let me know. We'll figure something out.
Awesome, man. All right. Have a good rest of your day.
You too. Thank you, man.
See ya.